And I think it worked. Okay, cool. Well, welcome everybody. Today is the 6th of May. It's Saturday. And this is the LA Sound Mixers video chat. My name is Chris Howland. And I'm from LA Sound Mixers, which is a group dedicated to mentorship and education to film sound professionals. And I'm really glad you guys could make it. We're going to talk about a topic today that we should all know about and learn about, and it's kind of easy to overlook it and just take it for granted, but it really is everybody's responsibility. And the more years you have behind you, the more sets you've been on, the easier it becomes to spot issues and problems that could turn into real safety hazards, and then what to do, having the wherewithal to talk to the right people about it, and to make sure there's action being taken to make sure no one gets hurt. So, and there's all parts of this. I mean, this is car driving coverage, working on water. This is watching scaffolding and scissor lifts, and knowing where the electricity is running to and from where, exposed wires, things like that. So there's just a lot to unpack. And I've curated a small list of accidents. I did my basic research last night because I procrastinate like crazy. And but even in my basic research, there was well over 100 accidents on set since 2000. So in the last 23 years, and most all of them ended up in serious injury or death. And you know, there's always going to be things like helicopter crashes. There's things going to be like, you know, stunt people missing the airbag on the fall, things that are, you know, miscalculations. And while we don't like those either, that's where somebody accepted a direct risk and did it. But we're going to focus on those things that are the failure of the collective to recognize small signs that this is now leading to a road where we may not be able to go home safe if this keeps going. So those are the things we're going to talk about. I want to welcome Adam Young as our normal co-host, and he's out. He's working today. God bless him. LA is not much work going on because of the strike. But we also have our other co-hosts, Lamps Dinha and Janna Raven. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate it. And Doc Justice is at the Gotham Sound Expo in New York. He maintains that he will be able to show up and give us this presentation while he's there on the show floor. I would love to see that happen personally, and I told him don't sweat it if you can't make it. But I know a few of us we're watching the Gotham Sound Expo live feed, and they're doing such a great job of just really good content, the new gear, being able to see the faces behind the people that make the gear for us, and we really thank them for that. And I also want to thank our primary sponsor, which is K-Tek. They make boom poles, shock mounts, sound bags, the Stingray, and they make a lot of really great gear for the people, for all of us that work in the field. And we are going to be going to Europe next week, and we're taking our LA Sound Mixers Boom Operators Masterclass there, along with the panel discussion on production sound, which I'll be moderating with the panel there. So it's kind of two events in one. We figured we're there and made the trip. We might as well do two things instead of just one thing. So we're really excited to have Kim there teaching his class. It's going to be really cool. And then there's going to be a really nice panel on a topic that everybody can relate to, which we'll release that topic in the near future. And that panel is going to include Mark Ulano, Petrushka Mirzwa, Don Hale, Kevin Cherkiai, and in Germany we'll have Tira Fanny with us as well. And I hope I'm not missing anybody from that list. Tino's here. Tino, remind me if I miss a name, but I think that's it.
Hi everyone. Yeah.
Hey Tino.
Did you mention Don Hale?
Yes.
Okay, then I think you got them all.
Cool, because it changes when we go to Milan and when we go to Rome. Will Monroe will be coming in to join us, along with Xenia Vinogradova, who's going to meet us there from Ukraine. So she's going to meet us in Milan, and she's going to tag along with us the rest of the trip and be on our panel with us. It's going to be really great.
Really? Xenia with you? That's great.
So after all of this, you know, I've known her now almost 4 years.
Oh, she's going to be thrilled with that. I mean,
First time I get to meet her in person, so I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
wow.
And yeah, and then also we'll have Daniele Turi joining us in Milan and Rome as well, because they run such an active business there, and they do a lot of reality TV ENG work, and just you can't go visit these places without connecting with the people who are really doing a lot of the work there. So it'll be really cool. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you, Tino. Thank you, K-Tek, for taking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tino, for doing these things. I mean, it's just, I wish I could come along at some point, but I haven't been traveling that much. But I really, really appreciate it.
Don't worry, we might draft you in the future.
Exactly. No, I think we decided to continue doing these kind of things rather than doing an expensive exhibition. That those events are benefit to the actual participants, and it also does benefit us. We get exposure to it, and we have Ken on board, and then all the other great people. It's gonna be just spectacular. We did it in 2019, and it was great. And so this one is going to go Berlin, Milan, and Rome. In 2019, it was Munich, Paris, and London. So, yeah. Well,
I still have the lederhosen.
Well, did you try them on lately?
Oh, don't even talk. Don't even talk.
I did mine, and that was a little bit of a problem.
Outgrew your wardrobe, huh?
No. The wardrobe got smaller.
Exactly. My lederhosen shrunk.
Yeah, that wasn't shrink. But anyway, so whenever Doc jumps in, we'll go to him, and same thing with Xenia. If Xenia is able to join us, then we'll go to her and get an update for how she's doing in Kiev. Is she still in Kiev, Tino, or did she go to northern Italy already? I didn't know when she was traveling there.
No, as far as I know, she is visiting friends in Sicily.
Ah, okay, great.
We gotta be careful. Sicily is not Italy, even though logistically it's still Italy. But yeah, no, she's visiting friends, and this is how she actually made it happen to come and join us in Milan, which we of course will welcome her with open arms, and we're happy to have her.
Yeah, absolutely. And big hello to Andres Moreno from Mexico. How you doing, buddy?
Hey guys, how you doing? Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm not in Mexico City right now. I had to join. I'm on a job. Yeah, I'm on a job in the Dominican Republic now, so I'm going to be here for a few months.
Sweet. Oh, that's very good. More people that are working that don't live in Los Angeles. We have a writer's strike going on here in LA, so nobody's working. Nobody's doing anything.
I heard that, and I was fortunate enough to take advantage of that because I had to send a couple slates back into Deneki to get them serviced.
Yeah.
And I spoke with Kim, and she said, dude, there's no business right now. So yeah, I could have them done in a couple of days. And it was amazing. I thought, damn, that's the only good thing that I could get out of this strike. I'm sorry that's happening.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, because work is just stopped in Mexico. Everybody started around like larger films and stuff are starting now, but the whole first half of the year has been pretty dead.
Yeah, I feel like for us, the strike started in January when when studios were not greenlighting projects just because it's more expensive. It's way more expensive for them to shut projects down after a strike starts. So they just said, it's first quarter, we'll wait.
So I'm not working on sets, but I can tell you right now I'm in Germany, and I've been talking to some sound people here. They're also having tough time to write to work right now, even though they do not have a writer's strike here. But for whatever reason, business is down almost in every part of Europe too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Well, great being here, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, I remember. When the strike happened, the last writer's strike, 2007 or 8. And I was only a few years into my career, and I did a lot of indie stuff. I was not quite in the local yet. And I remember the only thing that really changed for me was that now on all these indie movies, my resume was sitting on the desk next to somebody who's now not working on an episodic. And so it was hard. There was at least one job I was able to talk my way onto it. And then the other one, I didn't. They hired the other person, but then they hired me as their boom op. So I was able to at least cobble some days together and get through it. But this time is different, and I think there's a lot of new people coming in that have a lot of questions about it, like why is this affecting me, even though I'm not in the union? And it's like, no, everything trickles down. It affects all of us at some point. So, but you know, there's a lot more tools now for people here, especially in LA, to help pull a month together. I mean, I always tell them, like, there's no shame in driving an Uber for a few weeks to pull a month together if you're a freelancer. And there's plenty of other stuff to do. I had some really beautiful souls helping me yesterday move all my gear from an old lockup to a new place, and 6 people showed up, and we made really quick work of it. And but there was a couple that were like, we had big stuff to move, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. I've been working for a furniture moving company for the last couple of months, so we got these down, no problem. I mean, so, you know, having those side hustles is huge, and you know, and also being diversified is huge. Being able to work in reality, which is not affected by the strike. Being able to do commercials, which commercial production is still down, but at least they're still running. And then you know, documentary days. Like, I picked up a week's worth of work on a History Channel show, History's Greatest Mysteries, and I only did it, you know, I was covering my friend Caleb, who had to bounce onto another documentary. So if you're lucky enough to be diversified in different styles of filmmaking, then hopefully you'll have more options, you know, getting through this strike. But that's all. Unless anybody has questions about that, that's all the strike talk we didn't need to talk about. So I went through the topic briefly. Basically, we'll go ahead and start. We'll go ahead and start the main topic now, and we'll see if Doc and Zinnia show up, and then we'll cut to them. But if you guys, anybody on the chat today, if you have stories to offer, your own experiences, please share them. This really helps shed light on this subject, and there's going to be a lot of different parts to it. So I'm going to try and move through them rather, you know, at a nice pace. But if you have anything to say, you know, raise your hand, use the raise hand function, or just speak up. There's, you know, there's only 15 of us here today, so we can just have a chat. I think it'd be great. You guys with me? Everybody good? Tino?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's a proper topic here, but since it's everywhere in the world seems to be slow. I mean, it is, I heard in Germany, slow too.
Mm-hmm.
But they did have in the beginning of the year a shortage of sound people here.
In Germany?
Yes, no, Europe even. I do not have a connection here to basically say, hey, go there and find a job. No, I can't do that. But I can tell you, if you have connections to someone in the sound world, in Germany specifically, and maybe even in the other part of Europe,
Mm-hmm.
then, and you're looking for a job, I think it would be worth it at least to try, rather than staying for a long time, maybe unemployed, right? So, yeah, they have. I read a post from the BVFT here, which is an organization here for the sound people, and there was an open letter from the broadcast companies like the ZDF and the ARD, and they were saying that their consumers or customers were complaining lately a lot about the sound quality. So there is an improvement necessary, even if Germans might not really agree to that. But I mean, the German sound people, they're just proud of their job too. But again, that's what I heard, what I read, and there is possibilities if someone wanted to move, at least maybe for a while. I believe there would be ways to do that. So I put that just out there in case someone is flexible enough to say, hey, let me move for a while.
I wonder if, I wonder what the process is for being able to go there and get cleared to work. I had a friend
I'm almost tempted to say there is a possibility for a temporary work visa, and whichever company would like to hire you for that, they're probably capable of getting you that work visa in a heartbeat.
Okay. Yeah, because I do have one friend that recently went through the process in the UK, and they said it took 12 grand and it basically took a year to get through the process.
But was that a permanently work permit, or just for, like a year or so?
I did not ask that question. So
12,000 is a lot of money for a temporary short-term work.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it was, because she had to get letters of recommendation from colleagues that were citizens there, but it was a whole process. She was like, they really go into your background and make sure, but a year to get through it is a lot, but hopefully Germany will be a little easier.
Again, it might be really, might be not working well because I'm not thinking of everything at this point. I just heard that they lacking personnel, plus the quality kind of goes down the drain a little bit. So yeah, if there were people interested, I'm sure there's a ways to do that. But again, German sound people need to be contacted for that part. I'm just hearing this while I'm over here. Got it.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that intel. That's pretty good. So when it comes to safety on set, I have this list that I could send you. If you want this list, I can send it to you after the chat. It's at lasoundmixer@gmail.com. You can reach out to me. And also, if you have topic ideas for this video podcast, please let us know what you're thinking. I always get the greatest ideas from people who come up with them and send them in, and the light bulb always goes off, and I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. So please feel free to reach out. That email goes straight to me, and I'll look at it and respond. But getting into the subject of set safety, let's first talk about guns. Guns are something that is a necessity for certain stories to tell, and there's definitely different ways of doing it. I know after the accident on Rust, where Helena Hutchins, the DP, was killed and the director was injured, there was a few shows that said we're not ever doing live guns on set ever again, and they're going to commit it all to special effects, which is certainly one way to go. There's other filmmakers that don't like working like that. There's other actors that don't necessarily like working on that, because if the gun doesn't fire, then it doesn't kick and it just doesn't look right. And they all have to figure out what's right for their filmmaking situation and the story they're telling. But I think part of what we know about Rust is that there was some basic protocols that were ignored, and I don't know if it was why. I don't know if it was just fatigue or they were just trying to move faster or whatever. But whenever a gun is introduced on set, there's a process, and if anybody wants to share what they've experienced, please do. But from what I understand, that process is, if a gun is introduced on set, even if it's a rubber gun, a real gun, a replica, something that is where the firing pin is removed, any weapon gets, whether it's a knife, gun, or anything, gets introduced to the set, the first thing the AD should say is cold weapon on set, or something. They're going to make an announcement, and then they're going to offer anybody on the crew who wishes to inspect this and talk to the armorer can do so right now. And so if the shot is looking straight at the camera and the operator is like, yeah, let me look at this and make sure. I mean, even rubber guns, I've seen operators come up, grab it, tap it. Okay, it's rubber. And then that's the only thing that shows up on the set. But that all weapons should be announced. They should announce what they are and how, they should have the information from the armorer on why it's safe, why it's not going to fire, but it just needs to be talked about. And then the second step is that everybody should be able to inspect it. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're working on that set and you're going to be in proximity to this, even if it's firing a blank, you should be able to ask questions and figure out, how loud is it going to be? Is it going to be a full load? Is it going to be a half load? Is it going to be a quarter load? There's different, those are all different loudnesses. And you should know enough about your story to see if they want a muzzle flash or not, or if they're going to add the muzzle flash in post. But it doesn't matter if you're the wardrobe person, the makeup person, the cinematographer, the operator, the boom operator. You need to know that information. And when that process breaks down, when a weapon just gets hurried into set, put into an actor's hands, it's just for rehearsal, that's the red flag. That's like, no, like you have to still go through the protocols of announcing that gun on set. If that doesn't happen on any show you're on, whether it's a short film or a big feature, that's when to ask questions. And you either go to your AD, you go to whoever's in charge of safety, you go to the armorer directly. But this is, those are the things. If those simple steps would have been followed, it would have been a lot harder for that accident to happen. And so but those are the things. When it comes to gun safety, those are the things you want to watch out for. You want to make sure they announce it They allow you the opportunity to inspect it. They tell you exactly what it's going to do. If it's going to fire a blank, is it a half load? Is it a full load? How many shots are there going to be? In some cases, they should do a test firing of it in front of the crew, just so you hear it. I've had safety demonstrations on certain shows where they will, everybody will gather around, and the armorer will do the demonstration of what it sounds like and what it looks like. And that always, was a huge help to me as a sound person, because I would listen to it. So anyway, does anybody else have anything to add when it comes to guns and gun safety? Did I miss anything?
I just heard, and I was talking briefly with Keanu Reeves regarding the John Wick 4, because they use absolutely zero real guns on set. Mm-hmm. And he told me that the reaction is pretty good about the guns they were using. Actually, I don't know exactly the name of the gun, but it's like a sock ear, something like that they were using. And he told me that it works pretty good. Is the reaction, it bounced back. It's not like a real gun.
I think they're called non-guns, aren't they?
Yeah,
something.
It makes a sound, which is good for pose as a synchronism, that kind of puff. It's not like a real gun, but it makes like a puff, puff, puff. It's so you hear something. And
is it just shooting out like CO2, like air puffs, like pop, pop,
exactly, yeah, okay. Just like air. And the film was 100% fake guns, and everything was all the flashes and stuff added on post, which is, I think it's pretty good, because the film is great. It was a huge success. Yeah. So I think it's a good way. I know some people don't like that, prefer the real guns, which is obviously is different. But if I can choose a fake gun to be on set, I would choose fake gun for sure. But that's my 2 cents, actually.
Yeah. Jeff.
Yeah, I would just say that I had, my career was basically like 46 years, and I did a number of movies where we had guns. I've done movies with period guns, with current, regular guns, and, Mission Impossible. We had a bunch of, automatic weapons and all those things. And in all of those movies, I was really lucky that everything, they just followed the absolute protocols to the letter. And there was just no chance that there could ever be an accident, starting with the whole idea that there should never be any live ammunition anywhere on the set, anywhere even available to anybody to make a mistake. Unless you're doing a specialized shot where you're, which is usually second unit or somebody else's setup, where you're firing a real gun and you want to actually see what the bullet actually does and all. But that's handled like a stunt as a separate thing, and usually the actors are not involved, and all. But anytime the rest of the crew or the actors are involved, even if they were shooting blanks or anything, always there was protection for the camera crew or for anybody. They would get everybody off the set that didn't have to be there. And they would go through the whole routine of demonstrating that the gun just absolutely cannot do anything, no matter how many times you pull the trigger or whatever, and they would show an empty barrel. It all worked out. But I think, when you get in a situation where some corners have been cut, or you've got, in the case of Rust, where you have the so-called armorer was a person who was also doing props and was also not even on the set, and then all the talk about that they were actually shooting live rounds like at lunch, just for.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I mean, if that's true, I mean, that is just. I mean, I want to say that's really deadly, and it actually was deadly.
Yeah, and I think your armorer too needs to be a strong personality. It needs to be
absolutely
type. As hard as they are to deal with sometimes, when
it's like the fire marshal in the uniform, whatever, like that. Mm-hmm. Hang on, this is what we're doing. And everyone has to respect that, and you do respect it when you know that by having the armorer be that sort of person, and having an armorer who's had the experience, has done maybe 100 movies and all, you know, it's a no-brainer for them in terms of the procedures to follow that will result in a totally safe set. You have to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Janna.
Sometimes they'll also pass out ear protection for the whole crew for when the gunshot goes off. What is it? And that's one of the large things. I did an OSHA training last month on guns that they had televised through IATSE. What is it that they were mentioning, stuff like that? So yeah. Yeah,
that's true. That's the other thing, you know, especially during guns, they'll pass out hearing protection, you know, little foams for your ears. For the people around the camera, there'll be eyeglasses. Production should be providing that. And during the safety demo, they should have PAs walking around for anybody who wants them. So that's the other thing to look for. Thank you, Janna. That's
yeah, absolutely. That stuff comes out right about when you're doing that scene that involves guns. All that is just part of the same thing. It's just like, you know, it's like having the right lens for the camera or having whatever, you know, it's just part of the whole process.
It really is the same. It's the same thread of them, you know, pestering you to wear the dumb safety vest. And when you're working in the street, it's like, it's all the same thing. So yes.
And you've seen people go into the street when they've got it sort of like with one arm through, you know, because they, you know, they forgot to actually get it. And
yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. But yeah, they should definitely be giving you the hearing protection as well. Anybody else before we move on to the next point here? Cool.
Personally, I think that nowadays, I was reading an interview with John Wick's director. He said, nowadays we can create city spaceships, Godzilla, and everything else. Why not create flashing for guns on post? So it's, why not? You know, it's 100% safe. There's no reason to use. I know, but 100 years ago there was absolutely no technology. But nowadays I see absolutely no reason to, you know, to put the crew under the risk of using a real firearm.
Especially now with advances in AI, you know, they can actually manipulate the lips of an actor to move around another language. And an ADR that doesn't match. So they should be able to then make guns kick, you know, and sell it enough on screen that it's believable. So
yeah, for sure. So I see, personally, I see no reason to use, you know, real guns on set.
Copy that. Very good. So yeah, so moving on, we'll talk about car work and stunts, and the procedure around that. There's certain things that when you're dealing with cars and precision drivers, there is a protocol to that. And one thing to really be aware of is where if it's a stationary stunt where you have cars coming in and crashing and then coming to rest somewhere, you always, of course, they're going to have people that think about this, but every person on every rank and file person on the crew should be thinking about, where's this car coming from? Where is that energy going to dissipate? And what's going to keep it from, you know, where can I be located where it will go by me and it will not, it won't hit me or the rest of my crew, you know, or the gear. You want to keep everything safe. But there was one accident on LA's Finest, which happened down in the port of Los Angeles. And this is one of the things I found on the list. And I remember hearing about it, and they had it set up to where these large SUVs were going to come barreling onto the set, and they were supposed to stop at a certain point. They didn't stop. One of the cars ran into a big cargo shipping container, and then Video Village was placed right on the other side of that cargo shipping container, giving them some false sense of security, like this is heavy enough to protect us. And that SUV barreled into that shipping container. It rolled over and pinned, I think it was a showrunner. It pinned everybody in the village went scrambling, but I think that one producer ended up losing his leg over it. And then there were a few more injuries too, but that was just clearly them sitting there on the other side of this container, not really thinking about, you know, if the car doesn't stop, where is it going to go? And the people at Village, granted, they're telling their story, they're watching their shots, you know, I don't want to assign blame, but this is something, even as a rank and file crew member, you want to watch and go, okay, well, it's supposed to stop there. If it doesn't stop there, where is it going to stop? And these are these are the small things to look at that could potentially turn into big things. And you when you see something like that, you speak up, and then you get yourself to a safe place. But those are the things when it comes to car work. One of the things I look for is I want the shot, what we're covering, to be fairly simple. One of the big problems that can happen is that when you start piling on to the same to this, what is now a simple stunt, now we want to get this angle here of this doing this, and then you start adding cameras and coverage to it, and then you try to have this one stunt serve multiple means. That's when things can get really complicated. And I've seen movies try to do this, but anytime you're layering coverage upon coverage around a single stunt, it gets risky. So and especially for us as a production sound crew, luckily for us, we're, that is mostly just an ambient capture for us. But when they start weaving in dialogue in and around stunts that are supposed to happen, this is when your ears should really perk up, and you're like, okay. I know for me, I'm very reluctant to risk my first AS boom operator in that kind of environment. I would rather have them play ambience and just cover dialogue on lavs at that point. But those are the situations that you really have to assess. What is the primary goal of the stunt, and where is the energy of the car is going to dissipate, and if it goes wrong and they don't make this turn, where are they going to end up? It's just a lot of anticipation that has to happen. And those are the things to watch out for when it comes to car stuff. There should be a safety meeting around it. There should be, an explanation given to the entire crew before the thing is even, before it's even attempted. And as soon as it's over, even if it goes perfectly well, there's always should be complete silence on the set until they figure out that everybody's okay. And so you don't breathe that sigh of relief until, they'll yell cut, but then you still have to get the safety people in there to make sure everybody's good. And that's what you wait for. That's the somber moment, that you wait for to make sure we got through it and we can move on. But does anybody else have anything to add to that? Ours. Cool. Then so there's people posting in the text. I'm sorry, I'm too busy talking. I don't have time to read it. So hopefully Janna or Lamps, be sure and if there's good ideas there, let me know. You can read.
I have not seen any ideas in their chat line.
Okay. Cool. I just see people texting. But cool. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I had just asked, this is back to the gun thing. I worked on a feature where it was, there was a lot of guns, like automatic weapons, handguns and stuff, and they were shooting live rounds. And I just don't know what the ammunition was. They explained it, but I just don't know anything about that kind of thing. I was wondering if anyone had an explanation of what the different types of like blanks are that are used, or fake ammo that we should know about and expect.
Yeah, the different from what I understand, the difference in the blanks are going to be in the amount of gunpowder in the actual blank itself. Whether it's going to be a quarter load, a half load, or a full load. So a full load is like a real bullet, and it has the same sound. And of course, the bigger the gun, the bigger caliber weapon, the bigger the sound is going to be. On the unfortunate case of Brandon Lee, he was shot by a gun that supposedly had a blank in it, and there's some differing accounts of what happened, but that gun was a 44 Magnum, from what I read, which is one of the biggest handguns you can have. And so even if it did have a blank in it, there was one article where I read where there's still a plastic casing on a blank that will sometimes come out of the barrel with a loud enough explosion, and that's what hit him and killed him. So, but definitely with a larger caliber weapon is going to be a larger explosion and definitely more kick on the gun. I've shot a 44 Magnum before. It is unlike anything you've ever felt. That thing, if you don't have 1 foot behind you and 1 foot in front of you, your whole body will go back. It's just that big.
Chris, I think all blanks have something that comes out, you know, a projectile of sorts,
Okay.
that actually comes out and can do damage if you're close enough to it, and it's large enough caliber to have a force behind it.
Right.
But I don't know, maybe
JohnPaul.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the thing with blanks is if it's something like an automatic, whether it's a pistol or, you know, an AK-47, they actually use the energy from that discharge to reload the gun. So if it's a revolver, you know, you pulling the trigger is making the mechanical stuff happen. Whereas with even an automatic pistol, like a Glock or a 1911 or something, that's why sometimes they'll want to use blank loads, and they can't necessarily use really light loads because then the gun it'll jam. It won't go through the process of
it
ejecting
won't do
the
its
empty shell
ejection. Yeah, right. Oh yeah.
and load a new cartridge. But the thing with Rust is if you're ever doing something that's a close-up, this is part of where everything went off the rails, where they need to see a full-size cartridge with the lead in the front, you know, what looks like what everyone just calls a bullet, which, you know, good armors will build one, and there's no gunpowder inside, and they'll actually put a BB in there. And that way the last minute safety check is you take that cartridge and you shake it and you'll actually hear the BB rattling around inside. Whereas if you don't hear it, then the assumption is it's full of gunpowder, and do not load that into the gun. Because there's, especially for something that's doing period weapons, there's often not, you know, prop's weird because when they say prop, a lot of times it is actually a real gun. There's nothing blocking the barrel. That's why they're dangerous. You know, it's not a toy gun, which there is for something like modern guns, you know, like what they were doing with like John Wick or something like that. There's so that's just something that hopefully that's raised awareness. I mean, like I said in the chat, the thing that happened on Rust definitely made me rethink a couple projects I worked on over the years where there was guns and, you know, low budget indie film. And I'm like, it makes you wonder, like, were we ever close to something like this happening? You know, because we've all seen someone fall in a hole because someone didn't put a cone there, or, you know, almost get hit by a car or whatever. But yeah, anyway, that's one thing just with the,
Well, there has
if
to be
they're
a
ever using those
person,
prop bullets.
there has to be a person who's checking those blanks who knows what a blank actually looks like, aside from the armor. You know, it can't just be the armor telling people, hey, everybody, this is fine, or the AD telling everybody, hey, this is fine, you know, which I don't know anything about guns or ammunition. So like, I'm not that person, but so I just have to take someone's word that it's going to be safe, you know.
I mean, a blank would not have lead in the front or metal, you know, it would not have the actual projectile piece. Like Chris was saying, usually it's crimped over, and it has to have paper or something to hold the powder in there, or else it would just fall out. But I've definitely done stuff where the armor brings it out, the AD says hot gun or whatever, and anyone that wants to inspect it, like I always tell my boom op, you know, go take a look. If you don't feel safe, let me know, just walk. You know, we'll put a plant mic. We don't even, if it's just you and you're just not comfortable, like, let's screw it, you know. But yeah, it's definitely, maybe we need some sort of visual resource that people can see, like, this is you know, like a starter pistol blank, which are actually 22 calibers, are just a piece of metal and it's crimped around the top, and it has a little piece of paper or something in there, and when you shoot it, that's why if you look at, you know, track meets, you'll see like the flash come out, which is what they visually sometimes want, but it's not going to have that lead piece. And that's why if there's a close-up of someone, you know, slowly loading a gun, they'll use those ones that should have no gunpowder in them. So anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Does anybody here know Dutch Merrick? His authority on film firearm safety in Hollywood. So I think in the future there will be a very good addition to try to bring him in one of our panels here, because he has a seminar which is called Prop Gun Safety, and it's very good. My daughter, she did the seminar and she said it's very good, very informative, and the guy, he knows what he's doing. So I think we can try to bring him in the future. I think that'll be cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That'll be very cool. Sweet. So yeah, gun safety, car stunts. Now we'll talk about boat work and working around the water. This is one of those things where I think the last time I did this was on a feature, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the title of it, but it was a pre-dawn call in San Pedro, and then we had about a 40-minute boat ride out into the Pacific to get to the specific place where we were going to shoot the scene, which was right off a beach that was inaccessible unless you get there by boat. And it was an interesting place to shoot, but there was a lot of gear for a relatively small movie. And the biggest challenge for us was logistics, because we had this nice big boat that was like what they called the mothership, and then we had 2 different camera boats, and then we had the picture boat, and there was also a child actor who was there with there was only one, there was 3 of them, the mother, the child, and then the guy running the boat, who was an extra. And the thing that made me nervous about it was that on this particular shoot, the extra they hired looked the part, and he had to pilot the boat, especially for the boat to boat shots. We did have an AD in the boat with him, and he had to lay down. The type of boat we were in it had a high bow, but it was very much a small single hull boat with a hand operated motor in the back. And the seas got kind of rough. And so we were in a situation then where now we have I didn't know how qualified the extra who was operating the boat was at operating the boat, especially when the waves started kicking up. But to top it all off, he started getting ferociously seasick and just was having a really tough time holding it together. And so we're all looking at each other going, if the seas get much rougher, this is going to get really crazy. The good thing was that the camera boat that we were on shooting the boat to boat coverage was it was one of those rubber boats. It looked like it was inflatable, but it was like one of those boats they use for military special operations. It had like 3 motors in the back. It was extremely fast, extremely low center of gravity, and very maneuverable. So we felt safe sitting in there, and I was there with my bag rig, shark fins up on the top of the little cover for the where the pilot was in the back of the boat. And I was getting decent reception, but watching, at some point our camera crew had to go on the picture boat along with my boom operator, and we really had to assess if the waves get much bigger and that the guy operating the boat is getting seasick, who's gonna right this ship if something happens. And so that was something we had to talk through. But it was amazing that on that crew, that you could tell people that were more experienced were more worried. The people that were less experienced on the crew were just happy to be there, and they didn't really say a word. I don't think they were. I don't think they just. I think they were hopefully relying on us to bring up the issues, and so we did, and they made some adjustments to the plan, and we got out of there safely. But that was one of those things where things, the edges of the situation start to creep in, just variables that could potentially make it a really hazardous situation. And my boom op that day was just amazing. But there's also a child on the picture boat, so it's like we're all thinking about that too. Something happens, you save yourself, but you save the kid too. It changes everybody's priorities as soon as you add a child into a situation like that. And this kid was probably 5-6 years old, So that but there was a thing. We did talk through it dockside at the beginning. The camera crew went through a setup where they wanted to attach an arm to our camera boat. And then once they got out there, it did not work the way they wanted it to. It was not steady enough. They didn't have the reach. They didn't have the lenses. So they ended up having to call an audible, and they put a bag around that rig and never used it. I think they dedicated 2 hours that morning pre-dawn building that thing, and then it just didn't work. So when they have to call audibles on their camera coverage, that's when you pay attention as well, because these are all potential mitigating factors into the shots that we got that we wanted to do a certain way are not going to happen that way now. Now we're going to do them a different way. And are they going to be able to separate, just from a sound coverage standpoint, are they going to be able to separate their geography shots from their dialogue coverage? And luckily, with the way everything worked out, that worked in our favor, where they had to shoot the boat-to-boat stuff non-dialogue, even though we still had them laved and I could still hear them perfectly. But then once they got onto the boat and really got into the meat of the coverage, that's when it was really good for us. But going through that situation, watching this thing unfold, and watching the ADs, every plan starts as one plan and then it changes. So but as the style of photography changed, and then there was the crew member getting sick, the extra getting sick who was driving the boat on camera, like all those, you just really have to keep an eye on. You can't turn your back on any of it. And so boat work can be tricky, and even simple stuff like working around pools. You're talking about jennies and a lot of electrical stuff around water that just don't mix. And so you always want to keep your head about you. You don't want to do anything too quickly, too rashly. And you want to speak up if you feel like something is too close to the water. Even if they're mounting lights inside the water, you want to make sure that they have a diver there, somebody that's qualified. You in LA, it's usually cold in the water, so it's a wetsuit, but somebody that's there doing it the right way. And it's if somebody's saying, here, hold my phone, I'm going to get in the water, that's like, okay. So they're calling an audible. So that's what I had to say about water stuff. And it's tricky. You think it's going to be easy, but then there's always a potential for something to go wrong. Boats and water. Luckily I haven't been on a show that lost anybody in that situation, but it's not that wasn't by accident. We had to make a concerted effort to look out for each other, and and take care of the people. That was the first time going out on that one shoot where I actually felt a little seasick on a boat. I'd never been seasick in my life, but I realized real quickly, when you're going out to sea in the pitch black darkness, if I was inside the boat prepping some of my gear, and I couldn't see the horizon at all, and that's when I really started to feel woozy. So I just grabbed my stuff, walked back out on the fantail of the boat where I could see the horizon, and I'm like, I'm better. That's all it took. But
hey, Chris, can you enable screen share? And I want to show one thing quickly, that back to the guns, and then I'll be done talking about guns. But
okay. Yeah, how do I do that? Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. How do I do this?
I don't know.
We'll see.
Oh, don't worry about it if you can't find it.
No, I'll find it. Who else knows how to do that? Oh, here it is. Share screen. Sorry. You should be able to share. It says one participant can share at a time.
Host disabled, participant screen sharing still shows up.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, there you go. All participants.
Okay, here we go. This is on The Last Samurai. We had a lot of period weapons, and I know they had to make special blanks for the period guns so they could get some smoke and some stuff out of there. But you can see, the camera crew, they're behind plexi, Lexan, and they're wearing helmets, and it was all done the way it should be done. And you've got like, 10 guns being fired.
Wow.
But they were and they had a full armor crew that could deal with, particularly with the period weapons, because the period weapons were not as predictable as, as a modern weapon. A lot of times things would just go off without, so every one of those actors, and they weren't actors, I mean, they were all extras, and a lot of Japanese. There were language problems, but they always made sure they had translators, and they checked every single gun, and so it took a lot longer even to do a simple shot like this, but they just did it right. And of course, on a big movie like that, they had the time and the money to do it properly. So,
and I wonder if there's a guns to a ratio where if you have more than
how many
so
armor
guns, you need
people?
more people.
Yeah, so you don't expect one person to actually handle all that. I don't know. I know that, I mean, the crew is huge on the movie anyway, so I never even counted the number of people that might be responsible for guns, but
Yeah, because every show I've been on, it's always been at least 1 or 2 people, and that's it. But I mean, SWAT, the television show. Yeah, I want to say they had at least 2 or 3 on some days, especially on where we had the big SWAT scenes. Yeah, they had it so well dialed in on that show. It was they had a really good operation going there. So, well, cool. Any questions about boat work or water work, stuff like that? Then we'll move on to pyrotechnics, explosions, that kind of stuff. How many of us have messed with that before in a filming situation, Jeff? So that really does follow a lot of the same protocols as Gunfire, where there should be a safety meeting. They'll tell you exactly when, what's going to go off, what it's going to do. I think really the last actual explosion that I was working on a TV show on the Warner Brothers lot called Lucifer, and we blew up a car, and yeah, it was right there along the LA River, right across the bridge from the smokehouse there. That's where all the transpo usually parks their trucks, but they cleared it off, and that was our set, and we blew up some sedan there, which was pretty amazing because they told us exactly what it was going to do, and that the bomb or the explosion was inside. So they did say that the explosion was going to go up and out, and so that there will be debris. So they had shields, they had things around people, and we were moved pretty far away. But there's always a protocol. There's always a there's fire in the hole. There's a countdown, and there wasn't too many things around it as far as actors doing things, dialoguing, there wasn't much of that at all. This was a shot where they could cut to as soon as it happens. So where they're talking to actors, and then they turn around and see their car, and then it blows up. So, but one thing that was very interesting to me is that at the last minute, I decided to get goggles, even though I was 60, 70 yards away from the car. I was pretty far away. Plus I was also, behind some gear, but they had them there. So I grabbed them, I put the goggles on because I wanted to see the explosion happen. And sure enough, it happened exactly the way they said it. The windshield shattered, and all this debris and glass came out. But even 60, 70 yards away, a piece of debris hit my cheek, and it didn't cut me. It just bang, but it hit me with enough force. I saw it all coming, and if that
had gotten your eye, it would have been.
Yeah. And I felt it hit the goggles, and a piece hit my cheek. And I was like, geez, like they told us exactly what was going to happen. And I had this perception that I was safe. And I was like, good. Okay. No blood. Something just bounced off of me, but it was definitely motivated by that explosion. And I was far enough away, but we all got sprayed. And it was,
I don't know if anybody else has had the experience, but with explosions, I love it when they spell out exactly what's going to happen. And when they do it, that's exactly what happens. I always find that miraculous, and I appreciate it. but a lot of times they don't get it right. You know, they say there's no way anything can go any further than here. You'll be safer here. And then, as you say, you end up, you know, seeing some piece of shrapnel, you know, like right beside you, even though you were in that area where they said there's nothing could ever get there.
Yeah.
Because it's not an exact science, although the people that do it like to think it's as exact as it can be. But, you know, we're talking about explosions, you know. So the other thing, that the other protocol that gets followed, I think, which is really important, is to clear the set, to not have anybody anywhere near it that doesn't have to be there, even though a lot of people want to see the explosion because, you know, you've been preparing for it all day, and you know, who wants, you know, everyone wants to see an explosion. But they do their best to keep, you know, the hair and makeup people don't need to be anywhere near it. You know, they're not having any actors. And that's the other protocol, as you said, don't try and marry some other part of the scene, you know, while you're doing the explosion. Just treat the explosion as its own thing. Don't try and have somebody walking up to the car and doing the dialogue and all that, and then just, you know, even if that's what the script calls for, try and be as creative as possible to not actually have it be in the same shot, you know. So
yes, because managing the needs of a stunt at the same time as you're managing the needs of actors doing a dynamic performance, those two things don't really match, and they shouldn't be in the same shots at all.
Yeah.
So that's,
and usually the people that are setting up the explosion, they don't want to do it. You know, so we're going to do the explosion. We know there's some dialogue that happens before, and then, you know, the aftermath and all, you know, but let's just keep this, you know, let us do our work, clear the set, let everybody know what's going to happen. And then, you know, it all happens, and hopefully without any incident.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other, you know, the other thing that falls under pyrotechnics are things like flash pots, which serve a certain purpose. There's also squibs. Squibs are when somebody gets shot, they actually have a charge on their chest or wherever on their body they're supposed to get hit, and that will blow up and out. And they usually sound like gunshots. You know, I lost a Sanken CS3E to squibs that were a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. And it was also on a moving car shot. This, you know, bad guy comes out of the window of the passenger side window of an SUV to shoot somebody. And there's a camera mounted on the hood, close, wide lens, close, wide lens. And I had my Sanken mounted to it, but I didn't expect for him to, I just didn't expect it to be that loud. And it shredded the capsule in the Sanken. He had 3 squibs on his chest, pop, 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 and then he slumps, and that was the shot. But and the car looked like it was going really fast. It wasn't. It was in a parking garage, so you had things wiping behind, and it made it look like it was going fast, but they were maybe going 20, 25. But still, it was enough to shred the Sanken, and I now know what that sounds like. But there's squibs, and then there's also I don't know if they're called the same thing, but there are you know, when somebody is shooting at a certain area, and then there's little explosions that happen that illustrate where the bullets are landing. Those I don't know if those are squibs as well. Is a terminology for it, but there's actually a couple of different ways to do that. There are ways of just putting those charges along a wall or something, and then they get set off. There was a movie I worked on called David and Fatima, where there was a soldier. The lead actor was an Israeli soldier, and he's on top of a Jeep, and they're driving through unfriendly territory. And he was in the story, he's taking incoming fire from somebody who is obviously unfriendly. And the bullets lit up the front of the Jeep, and sparks went everywhere. And the way they achieved that was the armorer in the shot, the Jeep would pull up, and the armorer stepped out off of camera with this automatic weapon that was shooting these special type of bullets that were designed to ricochet off and spark off of the Jeep, off the picture car. And he managed to do it and not hit our actor, which I'm sure took a lot of faith. but that's how they did it. They did 2 takes of it, and he didn't hit the actor once, but I was pretty impressed by that. That's the other way to do those shots. And those definitely also take the same protocol leading up to it. You want to know how many shots are going to get fired, how loud they're going to be, when in the action that it takes place, and then when the shot definitely ends, so they can make sure that everybody's okay.
Doc is in a house.
Doc is here. Hey, you need a minute, or you wanna clue us in on what's going on?
Hey guys, am I interrupting?
Not at all, man. We've been waiting for you.
Right on. Yeah, I am here at the Gotham Sound Expo in Long Island City, New York. It's pretty cool. Let me flip the camera around, give you if I can do that. How does that happen on this phone? Here we go.
Nice.
Am I flipping?
Yeah.
So yeah. So we've got booths galore. We have a flea market here. There's a food truck. It's lots of gear, lots of fun talk. I'll show you around for a moment if you'd like.
Please do.
Yeah, it looks like a really big venue. I mean, like they've got lots of room.
Yeah, we are here at IATSE Local 52. They're hosting us, which is fantastic. They use this room in particular for their meetings. They have lots of events here. They also rent it out as the stage.
What a big space. Wow.
So I'll go through each booth real quick. We'll do a few seconds at the booths, show you what everybody's got. First of all, we have our friends here at Gotham running the live streams.
Woo! Very cool.
They're doing a great job with the live stream.
They do a pretty incredible job, and I'll even show you their gear. Sound Devices is here showing off the A20 Nexus, along with all their wireless. I'm lucky enough to be next to them.
God, Alter's there. Oh, geez.
Yeah. We even got Sennheiser here showing off their new EWBP and DX wireless. Next to them, our friends from 16:9 and Orca showing off now. They're actually in the middle of a live stream.
Oh yeah, I see that.
Coming around, we've got our friends at Zoom with all their recorders.
What's up?
And RME showing off their new interfaces and software as well. Shure obviously needs no introduction. This has been a popular stop all day. We've got Nancy Q5X from the Great White North showing off their great transmitters, player mic and such. WizzyCom as well. The flea market, whole bunch of used gear sales. They're killing it. Our buddy Andrew at Deity.
What's up,
Showing
Andrew?
off all the new stuff, the new wireless, the slate, the boom, all of it. Glenn from Zacom, say hi to the LA Sound Mixers.
Oh, LA.
There's the FP7.
Mr. Howland.
Hey.
We've got everybody on board.
Hey, everyone. I see you, Chris.
Clear comm. And Sanken in the house with all their mics, being able to listen to everything.
Let's go.
Phone Act too.
How's it going, man?
How you doing? You're on with LA Sound Mixers. They've got everything available out here. We've got Reading Audio in the house. My friend Scott.
They did a little thing with the, the time
representing Ambient, and who else they got here? Voice Technologies as well. Filming to say hi to the LA Sound Mixers. We're live.
Oh yeah, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like Viviana and stuff there too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Here's Nick with Electro. They've got all the new toys, a whole table full of transmitters and such. And we'll round it out with
EPA.
EPA, their headsets, their new mics too.
Big show.
And it's a big show. And IDX with their battery solutions. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Thanks, Doc. That was a great little tour.
Yeah, we're having fun here. And I've got somebody eyeing up a microphone right now. I've got to get back to the booth here.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for the walk around. I really appreciate it. Glad you're able to
For
make
sure. There's so much. I wish I had some more time to talk so we could download all the cool stuff that happened at NAB this past month. And there's a lot of things to talk about. So we'll continue to talk on the LA Sound Mixers Facebook group and in Strictly Sound Gear.
Absolutely. Strictly Sound Gear is Doc's group that is basically all Strictly Sound Gear. So it's a really great page to be a part of, and you should check it out. But yeah, we can debrief NAB next month if you want to.
For sure. For sure. There's too much to talk about, but I appreciate letting me interrupt.
No, absolutely. Thanks for making it. I appreciate it.
Get back to your
We
booth.
got it. Yeah, I'll see you guys back on the West Coast.
Cheers,
Good
buddy.
night.
Bye.
Very cool. So
That was
happy
nice.
able to join us. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know how he was going to pull that off. I was like, man, you're busy. You got.
he's a clever guy.
Yeah, he is. He is. But back to Pyrotechnics, squibs. Those are squibs. They make noise as well. Sometimes as they're as loud as blanks are. So be careful of those, especially if you're a boom operator. Know exactly where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to get shot, and just make sure you're not in the blast zone of that stuff. You should always have eye protection, ear protection, even for squibs. Even if there's no real gunfire, squib is still loud, and it will still jump out at that mic. So if you're a mixer, set your gains accordingly, and protect your ears. So does anybody have any questions on pyrotechnics and squibs, flash pots, gunfire? That was one of the big flash pot accidents that happened when I was a kid. Was Michael Jackson, and he was in this Pepsi commercial. You can see the footage still online, but he was standing at the top of a riser, and this is right when he's revealed. These flash pots go off behind him, and he starts walking down the stairs, and right in the back of his head just starts catching fire. Product in his hair started catching fire, and so everybody looked at it and didn't, they didn't do anything. I think they were all stunned, and finally it was a bodyguard that ran and tackled him and just started putting the fire out, and that was one of those things that is rumored to have kind of led to his abuse of painkillers and things like that later in his life. But those that was a flash pot injury, and that was literally the flash pots blow and they go straight up, but then they're supposed to dissipate before they come down. The blend of this was actually hot enough to where it was still burning when it came down, and it landed on him, and it was still burning. So that was one of the flash pot accidents I remember when that happened when I was a kid. And I remember seeing the footage of it on the news and just being like, geez. Another one, I think one of the first set accidents that I had read about, and then later on went and found the footage of, was really devastating to see, was the Twilight Zone accident, which was also an explosion gone wrong. And they were also using a helicopter. If you haven't read about that, you should read about that. It had every bad element going on at the same time. Children on set, a very dangerous situation with a helicopter right overhead, a Huey. It was a flashback to a Vietnam era thing. And one of the flash pots went off and took out the tail rotor of the helicopter, which was only flying at about 100 feet. And just the wash. And if you've ever felt the wash from rotors from any type of helicopter, that is such a powerful, it's enough wind to lift the helicopter. So it is a very powerful force at some point. And flash pots took out the tail rotor. The aircraft started to auto rotate, and a pilot is trained to land it as quickly as possible. But he had actors under them, and the two kids and the actor Vic Morrow, I think it was they were killed instantly.
Yeah, Vic Morrow.
Yeah, they were killed instantly by the rotor blades. And that is something that changed, not only set safety for a long time for the better, but it also, before then, there was very few rules about kids working on set. So that ushered in the era of actual safety precautions for children at that point. And that's one of those things, the more you read about it, it's just, I don't know, people felt this. We joke about having cinematic immunity. But this was one of those things where it was too close, too many explosions, a very big, a helicopter flying right over that is very susceptible to damage. Helicopters they're already kept in the air by managing violent opposing forces against one another. When you take one of those forces away, there's no redundancy in a helicopter. It's not like an airplane that has wings, and that if you lose your power or you lose an engine, you can still glide somewhere. A helicopter, just once it doesn't want to fly, it's not flying, and there's very little you can do about it. And so that one was a tough one to see, that I was reading about. Trying to think of others. I mean, I had
and then the Twilight Zone thing, they knew exactly what they were doing, the abuse that they were, they made special arrangements to make sure the parents would not be around. And I think they paid off the school teacher or the guardian that was supposed to be there, which was required even at that time, anytime you had kids on the set. And there were rules already in place even at that time that you were not allowed to work children at 2 a.m. or whenever it was. They just abused the whole process. And it resulted, and they didn't get away with it because they killed people.
Yeah, it's just, it's really unfortunate. It seems like there was a lot of manipulation of the process just in order to get the coverage. And
I personally blame John Landis because evidently he was the architect of all that stuff. I don't know.
From what I read, that's, John Landis and Steven Spielberg had a good friendship up until that evening.
Yeah.
And that's when
there was a definite big break. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when Spielberg said, not doing it that way. But yeah, there's footage of that accident, and you can see exactly what happens, but it's really devastating. It's, it's just there's so many better ways to do it now. And I think a lot more stuff back then was in camera. Hopefully we don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore with the way technology is progressing. So, let's hope. One of the other things I want to mention, when it comes to, things of circumstance, there's often, there's situations that can creep up on you because of decisions made weeks ahead of time in securing a location and prepping a place, and then understanding what you're going to do when you get there, and the unknown variables that you have to deal with, which certain people in an office somewhere are like, we can deal with that. The crew can deal with that when they get there. And then when you get there, it's really a totally different story. I mean, and I think one of the biggest cautionary tales when it comes to that was Midnight Rider, which was the accident that killed camera assistant Sarah Jones. And that was one of those things where they were on a train trestle, and they really should have never been there because it was an active train. Active trains were going through there, and freight trains in that part of the country are going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, sometimes even more. And they don't pass through those areas slowly. So by the time you see them, you have very little time to get out of the way. And in this case, they had taken a hospital gurney out onto a train trestle and set up this shot. And by the time they heard the train horn blow, they were told that, the train that's coming through here today has already gone through. There won't be another. So the crew operated under that assumption, and they got the shot set up, and then they heard the train horn blow, and then nobody really knew exactly how long they had. They just knew they had to get off the train trestle, because there's no place for a person to stand on one of those train trestles as the train's going by you. You have basically 1.5 feet, maybe 18 inches of clearance on either side, and that's it. So a handful of people were caught on the train trestle. They were unable to get off because there was a bottleneck. And I remember watching the video, and there was a bottleneck because there was a couple of people made the choice of grabbing the gurney and running with the gurney off the train trestle, but then trapped everybody else on the train trestle because they couldn't get around the gurney. And then the train hit the gurney broke apart, and that is what ended up killing Sarah Jones. And it was, that's one of those accidents where that one, I think, had I been on set, that would have been a really hard one to see coming, because I think you have this perception of safety that was given to you by the people who put you there, and then on top of that, once you hear the train horn blow, you think you got a minute or two, but they didn't. Everything went down a lot faster, and they ended up losing Sarah in the process, which is totally unacceptable. I remember when this accident happened, I sat there and I was just like, and I was heavily embedded in indie film still at the time, and where, I mean, when I'm working on indie movies, I mean, that's the camera crew is my crew too. Like we collaborated a lot, we looked out for each other. And I remember all of the first ACs I worked with, and I'm just like, man, I don't want to lose any of them. And so I was really, devastated when it happened. And I remember us going to work we were very somber at that time. And I hope people don't forget that. I'm a little disappointed with, how the legalities of it played out, the trials and stuff. But that's one of those situations where, a few bad decisions made early on in the process, before you even show up, there was decisions made that really set this disaster up to happen. And so that one would take a little more skill to see it coming. Especially when the only information you're given is that, there's not going to be any more trains today. It's like, all right, so you would know that. Somebody in the office would know that. So we just have to put your faith in that. But that's something, that's one of those accidents that happens that is a tragedy of small decisions. And hopefully, hopefully it doesn't happen again. But those are the things that will make you a more experienced crew member, is being able to read between the lines and see those variables as they creep up, and you realize, all right, I don't want to sit here and play armchair quarterback with it, but hopefully as we get further down and more experience in our career, we can really train ourselves to see these small decisions as they pile up and create a situation where it might get tough to manage. So Janna.
I have two experiences, both non-union. The first one was directly after the Sarah incident. I was filming with a non-union crew. They said, we have permission to film over at the train tracks. It's in Los Angeles. And they said, these tracks aren't used. I'm from Glendale. My house is like down the street from the railroad track. So I grew up with trains like almost all my life, living down there. And I looked at those tracks and I'm like, they're shiny, they're used. And so I had myself back, and then Union Pacific came over, told us all, come up here. We had to surrender our driver's license. They took down all of our information. They said, these are active tracks. They said, well, we have a permission to be here. They showed their permit. They said, no, not at the tracks, right over here. And then they stayed there, and sure enough, train came right through. The look on my face must have been livid, because I'm like, we just had Sarah happen. How dare you? I was just so angry. I just become silent because I'm human.
And there you are, train tracks and
right across from the police station that's on the other side. And if you could tell, I'm still livid about it. The second one was completely deactivated train tracks. I was working with Kevin Coons. We're shooting at nighttime, and that one was okay because we actually had Northern Pacific, whoever owns the train tracks that's over in Fillmore, it's the dead end where it was. And they actually had a representative there. And they said, this is where you can walk. This is where you can do. I went ahead and I was the boom up for Kevin. And I went ahead and I said, I'm not going to be put right here. I'm going to be right here on the grate. You know, that's because I could see this is safe. But, you know, we'll do laws. Seriously, this is just beyond that I'm here for. And he said, you do whatever is safe. And I'm wearing my safety vest that I own. And sure enough, the director and the first AD, think we're stupid, fell through the open track on the bridge with their leg. And they said, be careful of that. And I just, Kevin, he said, what happened? And I said, director just fell through. And then the first AD falls through. And I'm like, first AD fell through. And I said, and this is the reason why I'm on this great part. And you don't walk in between the tracks. They just said that at the meeting. Pissed off. So anyway, so yeah, it's like what Michelle Taib, she told me, Janna, you have to be your own safety advocate on set. Don't rely on the set. You have to rely on yourself.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm done.
Very
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, because those slats, I mean, they're not designed for people to walk on. It's just not. How far down was that little bridge? Hopefully it wasn't that far. So
about 30 feet.
Okay. That's
30 feet down below. Rough terrain. Yeah, it was. I could always pull it up on the map because it was literally at the dead end of the track. But it's not active tracks. But still, you have to have a representative there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Cool. So yeah, that's, you know, trains. It's that is a huge immovable force, and that's a really interesting thing that you said about silver tracks means that the tracks have been used, and I guess if they're not silver, then that means they're decommissioned, or at least haven't been used in a while. But yeah, I didn't think about that. Silver tracks. You'd think I would know that growing up in the South, putting, you know, nickels on train tracks and letting them get crushed. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
You should know that, Chris, from your younger days when you would cheat death and you would stand on the tracks and see whether you can outrun the train and all that other stuff you did when you were a kid.
It's just not a lot to do in East Texas. The train coming through was a thing, man. That was fun.
That's right. Exactly.
So, but it's funny in flipping through some of these accidents that I read about, some of them were prop related, where let's see if I can find it. Well, I'll go through some of these. There was an episode of Cops where there was the mixer, the bag rig audio mixer was a guy named Bryce Dion, and he was shot by the Omaha Police Department because, you know, the camera, you know, followed them right in to an active shooting situation, and Bryce, being the dutiful sound mixer that he was, when you're shooting E&G like that, you stay on your camera operator's heels, and that's exactly what he did. And they walked. It was in a Wendy's in Omaha, Nebraska, and he got shot, and the bullet came from police that were coming in from the other side. There were police coming in both doors of the place, and it's too close, too fast. But you know, that was one of those things where, you know, I had a friend, Jonathan Leluz, was working on a series up in, I think it was Seattle, but you know, he posts a selfie with his bulletproof vest on, and I'm just like, I don't, you know, it takes a whole different breed of person to do that, and I know he doesn't do that anymore, but you know, we all go through that, where it's like, this is what the job takes, and you make your decisions moment to moment. I worked on a National Geographic show called Lockdown, and they did profiles, hour-long episodes, profiles of different jail facilities around the country and around the world. I only did one episode of the show because it really wasn't my thing, but the shooter recommended me for the job. But we were embedded for almost 2 weeks in the Bexar County Jail in San Antonio, Texas, with people who are not really nice people. And I had to push back with post and the editing crew that was in New York on it, because they wanted me to hardline to the main camera. And then and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they really were like, well, this is how we do the show. And I'm like, I understand that's how you do the show. I'm not going to do that. The last thing I want is to, because we were going to be in the cell blocks with the prisoners. And I'm like, the last thing I'm going to do is let myself or anybody else get strangled with my beta cable. It's just not going to happen. And sure enough, it ended up helping, because, you know, I was able to run wireless to both cameras. And in some cases, I was able to cover 2 OTFs at the same time, with us following the officer that we were following that was tossing cells, and the producer with his handheld camera just started to randomly ask questions to the person running the operation, the guards, the boss of the guards. And so I was able to cover both and send, you know, coverage to both cameras at the same time. And I felt like, wow, that's pretty cool. But you know, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was only running into one camera. But they didn't really care about that. They were, you know, they wanted me to hardline, and I'm like, no, I have to think about the practicalities of where I'm going to be. And sure enough, when we got there, it was every bit. And I was lucky that the shooter who recommended me for the job was the one that told me all about the realities of shooting there. And he was like, no, if there's an officer who needs assistance call, we're going to grab our stuff and run to that cell block, and we're going to shoot it, you know, cop style. I was like, okay, great. You know, but one thing I'm not going to do is tether to the camera for that. And the shooter was a lot more daring than I was. I would definitely let him go in the door first, and then I would follow behind. And it was definitely lab coverage for me. But that was one of those things where the people sitting in the post were like, oh, we just want clean audio to camera. And I'm like, I will give that to you, but that doesn't mean it has to be from a cable. And it felt really weird that I had to push back so much. And I think that's probably maybe a factor in why I only did one episode. They called me for a second episode in Brownsville, Texas, but I'm from Texas, and I can't think of any other place I'd rather not go to than Brownsville. And also doing doc work is tough. We had sit down interviews with these prisoners, and in a lot of cases we were the first non-prisoner or non-prison related human being that has talked to them in years. And part of our job was to make them feel comfortable, kind of disarm them so they trust us and they talk to us. And we didn't talk about anything that was out of bounds. We stayed to the subject, but we had to make those people comfortable. And
I think, Chris, the choice of words, you disarm them, I think that's not exactly what you mean, but
yeah, hopefully they were disarmed before they came to us.
Right.
But take away their inhibitions, make them feel comfortable. And so we did that. But even in the end, hearing all these stories and having these people really open up to you, it's hard to be human and not feel something about what they're going through. Whether it's sometimes it just annoyed me, but other times it just made me profoundly sad that these people had such an unfair shake at life, and here they are. And so more often than not, we carried that home with us back to the hotel. Me and the shooter were just like, you know, it was just heavy. So I mean, there was definitely, for me, the idea of going to Brownsville to do another episode, I'm just like, I can't deal with that kind of depression. You carry a little bit of that with you on doc shoots. And that's, you know, when it comes to safety, like there was the practical nature of being safe, not having a hard line to camera, that kind of stuff. And at least I had the boom in my hand where I could hopefully defend myself enough to get out of there if something happened. Nothing ever did, thankfully. But then there was also the mental health aspect of it. I knew that for me to do multiple episodes of that show, would have to have figured out a way to compartmentalize the emotional part of it for me. Because like I said, it's hard to be human and not feel something for these people and not carry a little bit of that home with you. And, you know, which I did. You know, it wasn't quite PTSD. It's not like I was in the military or anything, but still, You carry that stuff with you. So there was a definite threshold there that I noticed that I was like, all right, that really did have a profound effect as the years went by on documentaries that I worked on. I really wanted it to be, I like it to be a subject matter that I can engage, that I like, and that's important. But when it comes to, social things like that, I mean, we were there basically just to cover the gang war that was going on, and there was an active gang war going on between the Mexican mafia and the Tengo Orajon, which are two rival gangs. And we interviewed people higher up. We interviewed the hierarchy of both gangs. And there was some hidden camera stuff we had to do, not hidden camera, but we had to hide the identity of of some of the people that were talking to us, because they knew it would mean their lives if they got caught. And then we ended up scoring a meeting with the Tengo Orajon and their upper council later on in the shoot. And so the two people that had come to talk to us a few days before, we had to act like we had never met him before. And because it would have meant his life if they knew that, if they knew he had sat down with us. So I think, on the first day was probably the first and last funny thing that happened on that shoot. When we got there, and it was just me, the producer from New York, we had an assistant from DC, and we had and the shooter. So it was four of us. And we got there, we talked to the sheriff who runs the jail system there in Bexar County. And then we talked to a deputy police chief that that was taking care of us the whole time. And their thing was, nobody knows why you're here. We're just saying that you're a local news press people. They don't know you're from National Geographic. So you should be able to move around. You'll have escorts with you, two people with you all the time that will, that can protect you and make sure, call for help if you need it. But we don't expect any problems. But nobody, you're here under a cloud of anonymity. It's like, okay, great. And then as soon as we leave his office, we walk across the like this cafeteria area to go to our first interview, which was going to be with the person who does classifications. And the very first thing we hear, like, I'm carrying my bag, he's carrying his camera and a couple of cases. And the first thing we hear is an inmate across the cafeteria singing the theme to National Geographic. Da, 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 da. And we're like, oh my gosh, like they knew already where we were from and what we were doing. There was no secrets in that place. And then we got there to the first interview, to the classifications officer. He was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. No, but there's no secrets here. Everybody knows everything. And so that was one of those things. That's my cautionary tale about protecting yourself practically in a documentary situation, but also the mental health part of it, being able to learn how to compartmentalize some of that stuff. So does anybody have any doc stories like that, or experiences they want to share? Small crew situations. And no is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Well, no, sorry.
I have a few, but I'd rather, we're going to run out of time, and I would rather get on to something about sleep deprivation.
Yeah, that's
but
well, you can always chime back in with that. But yeah, there was, in 1997, there was a movie called Pleasantville, and this is the incident that really kicked off the 12 on 12 off movement. And I'm glad Jeff is here to tell us about this. But the story is there was a person on the camera crew named Brent Hershman, and he was working an extremely long day, which a lot of us have done many times. But he fell asleep after a 19-hour workday, and fell asleep behind the wheel of his car and ran off the road, and he was killed in the ensuing collision. And it was one of those things. It was a trigger event that really had people for the first time, I think, noticing how overworked people are, and sending them home completely sleep deprived. I mean, I can't imagine a 19-hour day. I don't think I've ever worked that many hours. I want to say, yeah, I don't think I've ever worked more than maybe 15 or 16, which is still a long day. So, after that happened, there was a wrongful death lawsuit against New Line Cinema, New Line Productions, and then a company called Juno Picks Incorporated. And I don't know, Jeff, can you tell us how that ended up playing out and your?
Yeah, I don't know exactly the, I don't know, unfortunately, I don't know exactly the status of any of the lawsuits. But you're absolutely right that it was a wake-up call for a lot of people. I mean, no pun intended, a wake-up call.
Yeah.
But and there have been, you know, accidents before that that were never really necessarily attributed to sleep deprivation. But it was also during a period of time when there were so many productions that were just working terrible hours and over and over. I mean, no, like all week long, working bad hours, and then working into what later called, you know, my father referred to it as the lost weekend, where, you know, you'd have the what later was called the Fraturday, you know, which is when you'd already been working 12, 14, 15 hours every day. And then Friday come along and they just go out of their way to work well into Saturday. You know, I know the stories of people working in locations where they ended up having to black in a location because the sun was coming up and they were still trying to shoot the night shoot. And there were a number of other accidents. And I know that for some reason, my father really just picked up the cause and realized something's got to be done about this, because it's just, you know, and so when he started collecting stories from people, it turned out that there was a lot of people, almost everybody on crews at that time had fallen asleep at the wheel. Unfortunately, you know, didn't die, or maybe had an accident, maybe managed to get home. That was the genesis of my father wanting to do a documentary that tackled the whole issue of long hours, which later, you know, he worked on it for several years. And that's what became Who Needs Sleep, which was really revealed not only the prevalence of the long hours and the accidents and the death and all that, but the ways in which the unions were not dealing with it at all, even though it really is a primary labor issue, health and safety issue. It was just very much overlooked because it was such a difficult thing to quantify. I know, you know, I worked on a number of the interviews with OSHA representatives when they were trying to appeal to OSHA to weigh in on it. And OSHA was just, it was almost that sort of thing that, like, you know, a few more people have to die before we know that that's really what the problem was. You know, there may have been drugs involved in those accidents that we didn't hear about. There may have been, you know, but all the research revealed that it really was sleep deprivation. And we discovered so much of how that profoundly affects the body. You know, we discovered all the things about the normal sleep cycles and, you know, working, you know, shift workers who are have the problem of having to sleep at you know, during the day and work at night. And my father was so committed to this that he ended up actually abusing the very thing he was talking about, and fell asleep at the wheel one time and flipped his you've disabled my screen sharing again. Oh,
Sorry. I will do it right here.
that's all right.
There you go.
Yeah, he one of his prized possessions, he owned a lot of cars, was this El Camino. And one night he was coming back from one of the shoots that they were doing on Who Needs Sleep, and he fell asleep at the wheel and flipped the El Camino and basically destroyed it. And he wasn't hurt, fortunately, but you know, he sort of learned his own lesson. But I certainly learned a lot about sleep deprivation working on that and interviewing interviewing people. So it was, and the 12 on, 12 off movement did get a little bit of traction. But interestingly enough, a whole lot of it was driven by the insurance companies. When the studios began to realize that there was going to be the possibility of wrongful death lawsuits, and it was going to start to hurt their bottom line or something, had nothing to do with human decency or, really protecting the workers. And that's when they started offering hotel rooms, which really was not a solution, because, they would offer the hotel room on a Friday night when you'd already been working all week on location. People wanted to get home and have some kind of life with their family. So they, even if they should have taken the hotel, they wouldn't, because, I'm going to risk it. Let's, hope I get home in one piece. And, but so much of it was done really just to accommodate the studios' worry and the union's worry that there were going to be lawsuits and it was going to hurt the studios, and a few companies did try and curtail the long hours, and they tried to adhere to the 12 on, 12 off, and which is very commendable. And I think we should have spent more time publicizing those companies to say, hey, this is a good company to work for. You should be lucky if you're on one of those shows where they're really making the effort to, I don't know if anybody here had any experiences with a show that really tried to adhere to that. And maybe they'd have one long day because they were in one location where they, had a problem of having to get out of a location at a certain time and all, but that's okay, but to do it, to have it just scheduled, the only way we can make our schedule is let's work 14 hours today, 14 hours tomorrow, 14 hours the next day, and then maybe it's going to be a 15 or 16 hour the last day. So it's, fortunately, I think things have gotten a little better. I know that even though the union was totally against my father's efforts and the 12 on, 12 off effort, and they kept the IA kept saying, so there's a lot of crew members that want the hours because they want the overtime. If you start going in there and limiting the days shoot, there's going to be a lot of people are really upset, and Pop would say things like, yeah, well, they're going to be really upset too, when somebody has to make the call and tell the wife and kids, that, your husband didn't make it home today,
But they made their healthcare hours.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and they could buy that boat they wanted to, and
that's where we, in our quest for hours and having to pay for our healthcare and that kind of stuff with hours, it's like that's when we become the unwitting accomplice to long hours, because
oh yeah, absolutely,
we become dependent upon
it. Yeah, it wasn't just greed that, well, I want to make more money so I can buy the boat or whatever. It was to get the which brings up the whole other problem of healthcare in this country, which we could go on about for.
I mean, yeah, that whole scheme, with nationalized healthcare, like they have in the UK. I mean, that would totally get rid of us having to qualify hours, all that stuff.
Of course.
It would really change a lot of things, but.
Yeah, I don't think we should necessarily take the time up to talk about healthcare, but it would free up so many businesses from operating differently than they do. That's why General Motors went to Canada and and all, because they end up having the state take care of something which they're supposed to take care of when they're in the States. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the mitigating factors. I think a lot of what leads to long hours too is that there's decisions made on scheduling, how much we're going to spend on how many days of shooting to cover so many script pages. That's where the equation starts, and I think that's the first stage where you feel like because
then also the higher ups hiring people in production and even directors who just don't have their shit together. I mean, you might possibly be able to get everything done in 12 hours, let's say, with somebody who's organized, who has the experience, who knows that, knows how to get it done. But you end up with people, maybe discussing what you're going to be doing today for an hour before the crew can even get to work. Yeah. And then scrambling and then deciding to do the stunts at the end of the day when everyone's overtired. add that into it, you know, so.
Well, there's, you know, that's where the equation starts. And it's, and then also when you're in the middle of a shoot, I've been on shoots where it's all locations, but we're supposed to have 4 days at a location. And now we have 3. And so how does that work? Is there going to be rewrites? Are we going to be consolidating scenes? Are we moving the story along a little faster? Are we going to change the location of something? Like, you know, you want.
Isn't it wonderful if you're on a production, you can see that they actually have done that. They've accommodated, you know, a location that maybe they thought they had for 3 days, only been 2 days. So let's move scene 23 and we'll do that on stage because we really can't do it here. You know, or, and you know, but that requires that you understand the process and that you, you know, can change things. You know?
You can see as the big picture is changing, how is production going to maneuver to accommodate that? And if they do nothing, that's the red flag.
Then you're sunk. Yeah.
It's like, we're going to batten down the hatches here and just, you know, we're going to do the same great job we know how to do, but we have to conserve energy at this point because we're going to be here a while. And, you know, that's, so these are, you know, hopefully this will help people learn how to spot these trends coming down the road at them before, you know, before it's too late.
Yeah. Has anybody here had to deal with whether you take the hotel if they've offered it or not offered it? Or I mean, I can't even know what sort of work everyone here is doing because I don't actually know all of you all that well. But
I've never actually taken the hotel before.
Yeah.
And honestly,
but you do remember when they started offering that, you know, that's.
I started really working in indie film in 2006 and 7.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so I don't think they did it then.
No.
I want to say it was after 2010, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
They started doing it. And I still never took it after that. But there was one instance where I did an overnight and then I got stuck in rush hour traffic coming home, and it was really early. And I remember, I fell asleep about a 1/10 of a mile from my condo.
Yeah.
And there was a really high curb. I fell asleep. Next thing I know, I ran up onto this high curb and my right front wheel of my Honda Element snapped in and I grinded to a halt. And I was just like, I cannot believe that just happened. And I was lucky. I missed parked cars. I missed a fence. I missed a telephone pole. Like, it could have been so much worse.
That's certainly what Pop discovered doing all these interviews with crew people, that almost everybody had some incident, or they at least had been on a movie or on a TV show where someone had a problem, and it was just so widespread.
Yeah. So if anybody has anything they want to chime in on that aspect of it, please feel free anytime. But I do want to mention the last thing. Well, this could be the last thing. It's things, environmental concerns. There was one show that I worked on where, not that I worked on, it's one show that I read about here, and I don't know if I can find it in time, but they were shooting in Iceland. It was a feature, and there were high winds, and people were injured by a plastic prop that was like a what do you call it, an ice cube. It's
igloo.
No, it's like a glacier type.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, that got blown over by high winds and injured, a half dozen crew people, because it was just wind. It was a big piece of plastic that was supposed to play as a big piece of ice, and it wasn't secured properly. Wind caught it perfectly and it blew it right onto set, and people got hit. And that's environmental concerns, and who knew that something that big and that heavy would be able to just fly like that? But apparently it's physics are there. It's science. Another thing that I read about was in 1978 on the set of Grease, during the prom scene, they were shooting in this high school gymnasium that apparently had no windows, and they were using the old arc lights in there because this is 1978. And so the temperatures in that room reached 116 degrees while they were shooting this. And there were several cast members that had heat-related illnesses at the end of that day. And they're all put together in their prom dresses and full makeup and everything. And you can imagine how hot and crazy that room was, about 116 degrees. I mean, that's the environmental thing. It's like you walk in, you know, there's arc lights there. Granted, things are a little different now, but you know, that's one of those things, like there's no ventilation in this room. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and plus you get bodies in there. It's really tough. And you know, I know when I walk on a sets like that now, I want to see where the AC tubes are coming in and out. First of all, for me, it's a noise abatement thing. I want to know how quickly I can shut them off in between takes or during takes. But when you don't see that apparatus around, and you know, like rooms with a bunch of bodies always get heated up. See, there's ventilation is always something you want to watch for and make sure you have.
Now, what about that period of time when everybody was smoking in the set, you know, for atmosphere of smoke?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Using crap that really shouldn't even breathe it in great outdoors. And, you know, I had to put my foot down on a number of things. And fortunately, there were a number of movies where I actually could get off the set, which obviously, you know, the camera people can, the dolly grip can't, the actors can't. And, you know, sometimes it'd be so ludicrous that you'd end up, they'd be smoking on the set, and when you look at it photographically, it looked like smoke on the set.
Yeah.
Didn't even create the whole idea of, you know, diffusing the light the way, you know, so you can see shafts of light coming in. You'd see like smoke, you know. I remember even, you know, great cameraman, Connie Hall, good friend, you know, terrific friends of my father, really he got out of control on one job where he was smoking stuff in, and he was even appalled at what he had done. And they had footage they almost couldn't even use because it just, you know, they were smoking it in to such a degree that you could just see, it was like, you know, is the set on fire or what's going on, you know? And it was, you know, I think it was like a courtroom scene or something. And
somewhere it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it just didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. I worked on just recently, I want to say maybe a year or two ago now, I was working on Pam and Tommy. I was covering covering Juan Cisneros, and we spent the first part of our day out. We were shooting at the stage where they shot It's in Van Nuys, where they shot The Office, and then I was there for another show called Mutt and Stuff for a while, for about a year, and then Pam and Tommy ended up shooting there. But I came in to cover Juan. We actually started across the street where there's kind of this junkyard, and we shot some scenes with Seth Rogen there, and then Seth Rogen. Anyway, and then we ended up coming back across the street later in the morning to shoot on the main stage where they had the main house set where Pam and Tommy lived, their living room and all that stuff. But we walked onto the stage and it was like hot. It was crazy hot in there, and they didn't turn on the AC before we got there to cool the room down. So we're like, geez, this is hot. So all they have are these swamp coolers too. So they turn on these huge swamp coolers, and I'm just like, this is it. Like, and they were running AC from the outside, but that AC went straight over our heads onto the set. Right. So the set was nice and cool in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But then it didn't trickle out to the outer rims of where the set was. They just had swamp coolers there, and people would come by and stand in the swamp coolers.
Yeah.
It didn't cool the room down like they thought it would. And I think we got through a few setups in the afternoon, but finally we heard over the radio that they were shutting it down for the day because it's too hot to shoot on the set.
Yeah, just
and I
unworkable.
And I was like, all right, I didn't expect that. I appreciate it, but how did that happen? And apparently there was a lot of back and forth conversation about it from when they first walked in the door, but it finally took the
actors. The medic.
Took the medic going to the FSO.
Wow.
And the FSO was the one that shut it down. The fire safety officer is what the FSO
Yeah.
was.
Oh, good.
So between the medic and the fire safety officer, they shut the show down. And we're like, all right, pack it up. We're wrapped. It's like, okay, great. So, went through my wrap stuff, and we finished out the day, but we finished a good 4 or 5 hours ahead of time.
Yeah.
We walked away from it because they deemed that, this is unsafe. And so I felt like was a great decision. So because I saw it, I was like, I was surprised because, I wanted to know, I was curious who has the chutzpah to step up and go, somebody who's not in fear for their job.
Yeah.
Of course, that would be the FSO.
Well, I'm glad it worked out that way. Usually the people that object and make things happen are the actors, particularly if the actors have enough stature.
Yeah.
I know there was one of the Tom Cruise movies I did. We were doing something that was really not safe, and it was really only Tom Cruise that stood up and said, you know, we're not doing this. This is not right. And even though, you know, Tom has this reputation for doing his own stunts and doing things that are actually quite dangerous, but he really stood up for the crew and said, you know, this is just not going to happen, even though the director said, well, we got to do it. And the DP said, you know, this is the only way we can, you know. Tom said, well, you're going to have to find some other way to do it because this isn't going to happen, you know. Yeah. And it was, you know, obviously, I mean, I think Tom was probably one of the executive producers as well, as he tends to be on the things he's on, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for the safety stuff that I wanted to talk about. If anybody else has anything they want to contribute, speak now. Would love to hear your stories. And I want to thank the people who have chimed in with their experiences. I really appreciate it. Janna.
If you're in the union, you could take this class called OSHA 10. It is under the IATSE Trust Fund. They actually list a whole bunch of things about chemicals that are used on set. What are you supposed to be looking for? You can ask for things that are on set like chemical wise, and they have to provide you with the papers. How do you read them and stuff like that? It is very well worth it, but it's really hard to get into the class. And since we have the writer's strike, you could apply for it if you're in the union, and you'll be able to try to get in, or they could have they might be able to have the local be able to do it, but it has to be 20 people per class. Apparently it is. The other thing that they had mentioned was at the OSHA 10, that each local, they would like to have CPR classes done so that you are immediately already trained for it. So there you go. That's it.
Very good. And these are LA specific things?
Nope. Across the country.
Across all of IA.
Great. So take
all IA.
Do all that, or just hire Janna on your crew as a utility, and she was.
I'll just do it. No,
OSHA's really good at that stuff when it's dealing with the chemicals and something like that. They just could never get their hands around the long hours, you know, the sleep deprivation. And we tried so hard to get it into the classes.
No, I wanted to mention that too. I forgot about that, but that was my thing when I took the first classes when I got in the union. I raised my hand when it came to general safety and all that stuff. And I was like, why are we not talking about sleep deprivation?
Yeah.
And they were like, it's not a part of the curriculum.
Right.
And I'm like, why? And then
we tried tried so hard. And I was at some of the meetings where after they were done doing all the stuff that they were doing, I stood up and I said, there's one key area for health and safety, which we haven't discussed, and we need to talk about it. And, you know, and the people who were teaching the classes were just very apologetic and said, well, you know, we really can only teach the curriculum that we've been given. But, you know, what you're saying is so true and so important. And, you know, we would end up having sort of like side classes where people wanted to hear about sleep deprivation and all, but it never got officially.
Yeah,
you know,
that's off the record.
quantified.
That's what our instructor told us. He's like, for us to add it to the curriculum means it has to be acknowledged as something that is a risk as a factor, and the studios don't want that liability.
Yeah,
the record, he told us, but to me, I was shocked.
Well, the OSHA representative that I was involved in when they were interviewing was saying things like, "This is something that your union really has to do. We can't come down on." Talking about limiting the hours that you can work and all that, you know, no matter how much of a health and safety issue we think it is, you know, so I don't know. It's in other industries, they do limit it, you know, in the trucking industry and airlines and stuff like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That's really cool. So future events, we're going to wrap it up. We have our Lawless, if you're in LA, we have our Lawless Brewery meetup, which happens on the last Monday of each month. And then we have this video chat right back here on the first Saturday. Thanks to my friend Ryan Peterson, we just started putting together a newsletter. So if you're not a Facebook person, or you just want to shy away from social media, you can definitely reach out to us. And
that's great.
We can get you added to the newsletter. All the newsletter it has very small little write-ups and things, but it's primarily used to just let you know where the events are going to happen and how you can RSVP to them. We're going to send it out every month. We're going to try and include some little nuggets there, tips, ways to help you, improve certain aspects of your job. We're going to profile some of the new Y16A trainees that are coming up through the system, and hopefully helping them get some exposure and for the community to learn that they're out there and learning. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a fun endeavor. And Ryan is the one that really pulled it together. We had a suggestion on the LA Sound Mixers private discussion group about, you know, hey, if we're not on Facebook all the time, how can we stay in touch? Is there a newsletter? And Ryan sent me an email. Is like, we should do this. And I was like,
Oh, good. Expand the Chris Howland empire. Yeah.
yes, you know, LA Sound Mixers. I've talked to Lamps about this. I want all this stuff to happen, even if I'm not here. So
Oh, I know.
I
Yeah, well,
really want to. I really, you know, I'm glad
Yeah.
Ryan has taken that on. I was like, I can help you with content, but somebody's got to be there to pull it together.
yeah, you're still the main guy though, and you're the one that makes it happen. So.
Well, I'm just glad people are interested, and I think we really
Yeah.
are stronger as a community when we're helping each other out. As usual, I mean, I want to encourage everybody, no matter where you live, organize your local community, meet your local sound mixers, share work together, share knowledge together. You know, teach each other how to negotiate,
Mhm.
figure out what makes sense for where you live and for the jobs that you have. It will keep you all stronger, and it will make this craft more sustainable across the board for everybody, so that we can all support our families with it and keep doing this job that we really love to do. There's no other job like it. And so I'm a huge advocate of that. Wherever you live, go, you know, meet your fellow sound people, share information, share clients. You know, define the edges of your community, and it will support you. And it's happened for us here in LA. It's happened in many other cities. And
Yeah.
I'm always happy to see events happening in other cities, sound mixers
Yeah,
meeting
well,
up with each other, filmmakers.
Big thank you to you, Chris and Lamps, and anybody else involved in keeping things going, and also Tino. Even though you're very quiet, it was nice to see you.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to.
I haven't been participating that much yet, so but it was very interesting to listen in and see what I mean. Listen, I'm not working on sets, so
Yeah.
for me this is interesting to see how
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys work with that, and you share
And
your
give-
information, your
and
stories.
give-
It was very interesting.
Give Brenda a big hug. I know you will anyway, but from me. So
When I come back to the US, that will
Yeah.
be in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So K-Tek has been a huge supporter of getting this message out, and they're, you know, for the second time,
No,
bringing
they're
us out to
fantastic. You know.
yeah, bringing us out to Europe so that we can have some of these events and help the local sound communities
Yeah.
connect with each other. And
Well, there is no better community than the sound community.
I know.
that's true. And yeah, so thank you, Tino. Thank you, K-Tek. We'll go ahead and end the recording now, but we'll keep the room open if anybody wants to linger and chat a little more. But thank you for coming. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Oh, good.